So I'm going to get things kicked off here. Hello. Today we're going to be talking about understanding file data, specifically leveraging analytics to avoid shortages, improve capacity planning, optimize management, and a whole bunch of other things. My name is Patrick Hines. I've got a real quick going to go over my background. I've got about 20 years of consulting experience in both the IT and development world. I work with some of the largest organizations in the world, such as the Department of Defense here in the U.S., as well as major banks and manufacturers around the world. And I get involved in a lot of business challenges, ways to make business operations work better, with special emphasis on storage and security. I've been a Microsoft Certified SQL trainer for over 15 years now, so that's another one of my areas of expertise. I'm a regular columnist for the Software Developer Times. West Point graduate, Gulf War veteran, and I have over 50 technical certifications to my credit. NTP Software has asked me to come and talk about this because I've dealt with this problem for many years now. So the first question is, what if you could have information to make the right decisions? That's something that bedevils most of the people I deal with. They want to know that they're making the right decisions. And a lot of times when you're dealing with many terabytes or even petabytes of data, a lot of our decisions can feel like guesses. What if you could forecast your data growth and your storage needs, especially with accuracy and precision, knowing that you're looking at the right parts of the organization? And what if you could identify the biggest risks in your environment? Well, you'd want to do that. That would make sense. But those are all difficult things to get by just browsing around and looking through millions of files. The data structures have just gotten too big for these answers to come without some help. And so I've got this analogy of a air quote friend of mine who's gained a little weight over the years, and we'll call him a friend just out of politeness for myself. But the doctor says it's time to lose weight. And so the first thing is, he notices that he's getting a little older, he's feeling more tired, things aren't going as fast as they should as far as being able to run or carry things. His pants are a bit tighter. And the solution may be to throw out the scale and buy bigger pants, but that's denial. The painful, you get rid of the reminders of the weight gain, you get rid of the discomfort of the tight pants, but what happens is the problem just keeps getting bigger. If this were you, you wouldn't want that to be the solution. We all know with common sense that's the wrong approach. Well, storage is the same way. Most organizations are growing to a point where they really can't afford to ignore the problem anymore. The best way to handle this is to get meaningful file data analytics that let you plan and manage your storage more effectively. They let you prevent downtime. They let you clear up your backup windows by getting the waste off of the storage systems. They allow you to do things like make decisions about policy. Maybe you didn't worry about EXEs and home directories, but now you're seeing there's so many of them. Or maybe there's a new service available that has a new file type that's taking up and gobbling up disk space. You can find these things before they bring your storage to its knees if you have the right analytics tools. You can find inappropriate files and then measure the effectiveness of those policies so that if you do have ways to enforce your policies, you now have ways to validate the enforcement is actually working. All of these are the hallmarks of an analytics system that lets you know how your unstructured storage is working and make sure that it works for you. So if we take a look at this chart, we're on slide 6, these are some of the examples of the insights that you can gain with proper analytics. So what do you think are the most common file types that you're using in your storage area? You might be surprised by what you see. In most organizations, we're seeing media files as taking an enormous amount of storage. I was even working at the Pentagon, and they had media files in a larger degree than they expected. We want to know what we're using this storage for because we're paying so much for it. And these kinds of analytics give you these answers. In the example slide I'm showing, we're seeing WMVs, movies, and AVIs. And this is real data from actual experience in the field. Some organizations view PSTs as a great thing, a way to save storage on their Exchange server. Others view them as the worst thing under the sun, and they wish they would just be banned from the environment. So every organization has a different relationship with different file types. So there's no one-size-fits-all report. We just need to know what's out there and in what proportions. And so you need something that's configurable, that lets you adapt it to your own world, rather than trying to be dictatorial and say, well, this is bad and this is good in absolute terms. In some organizations, media files are the norm, and they should be. And others, they're a bane and they need to be gotten rid of. Security is another thing that bedevils a lot of storage managers. Who has access to files? What's owned by administrators? When a file is owned by a user, then that file's security is at the whims of that user. A user who owns a file can decide who else gets access to it, and can even grant themselves access even if it's been specifically denied. There are some files in your environment that probably have no access. And so an assessment will reveal those and get you the ability to get people back in them. Now, if a file has no access to it, either no one cares about it and it shouldn't be there, or it's a problem and it's missing data. It's just as bad as not having a backup and having someone delete it. And then there's also explicit permissions and everyone having access. These are all things that can be discovered by the right analytics system. An interesting statistic is how busy is the file system based on new file creations. And this can reveal times when you need additional space. Maybe you should buy your new storage acquisitions in December so they can be deployed in time for the April rush. Maybe you need to have a blackout period because other things are going on. We were dealing with a U.S. government agency not too long ago, and they found that the spring was a huge spike for them because they would go out and do their surveys and audits during that time. And during that time, they would generate an enormous amount of input information. And so they actually took a look at that and decided to have a blackout period for certain operations on the storage during that time of the year. And age of the files. There's many things you can do if your files are old and not being accessed. For example, if you have half of your data, which is quite often, is older than X months, and X months is 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, whatever that case may be, you could actually decide to go with the tiering strategy. Well, that decision has a lot to do with where your files really are at. A tiering strategy makes sense in many organizations, but if all of your data is less than 6 months old, then you're going to have to think about it in a different way. The data will often point to the fact that you've got storage that you're not touching at all, files that haven't been accessed in many years, but they're still taking up valuable primary storage space. And maybe the right thing to do is to get them off that storage space or put them off to some other media. So also a good file analytics system will tell you a little bit about your stuff. It'll surprise you. It'll tell you that less than 1% of your files are, say, over 10 megabytes. But most of your storage could still be kept in those few files that are over 10 gigabytes, those really large files. A lot of times they're ISOs or they're virtual machine images that were backed up several times that don't need to be there. In many organizations, just one of these insights can save terabytes of information and prolong the life of the primary storage for quite a long time. So what you want to look for in a storage environment, in an analytics system, is something that's configurable, something that lets you pick what file types are of import to you and which ones are a waste. One person's trash is another man's treasure. Is that what they always say? So being able to define what a business file is very important. Being able to do intelligent analysis is key. One of the things that we notice is that there are many environments where guesses are used all the time to make decisions. I was talking to a storage administrator a few years back who in October had to tell his superiors how much storage they needed for a field office. And so he believed, based on his gut, that they needed about 3 terabytes for the coming year. But in June, that storage was gone. The users had consumed all of it, and he really didn't know why or how. So he went back, hat in hand, asked the managers for 3 more terabytes. Actually, I think he went for 4 terabytes that time because it was already half over the year. Figured that they might use a little more than 3 terabytes since they ran out in June. And by October, it was all gone. And in this case, this administrator complained to me that he almost lost his job because of these guesses, and he didn't want to guess anymore. And so he needed a way to track exactly how the consumption was increasing and do intelligent analysis. When you've got a storage system that's measured in hundreds of terabytes or petabytes, you can't go through the files one by one or even directory by directory. A list of 1,000,000 files will take you literally the rest of your career to walk through and look through. And by the time you got to page 50, the data is outdated. So rather than be a system that just dumps buckets of data on your head, you need a system that is based on consulting. A company that has a consulting spirit will know what to look for and will give you the signal to noise ratio you need. If only 1% of your files out of 100 terabytes are a problem because they're too old, too big, can't be accessed, or for whatever, those are the ones you want to hear about. You don't want to hear about the 5 million 10K files that are all spread around the file system. They're not worth your time and effort, especially if they're permissioned the way they should, the type they should be. You want to know about the exceptions. And so intelligent analysis is one of the keys here. And an open database. No system anywhere in the market has every report you will ever need. Every organization has that one report that's an oddball based on something they're doing internally that they need to build or they need built for them. So an open database is a key part of this to prevent the solution from being a black box that you can't access. So anything that has a database you can access and you can understand is a big win in this case. So what we saw a moment ago is that the case for analytics is you don't throw out the scale. You have to keep measuring, but there are tools that you need to use to make that a reasonable thing. The benefits that file analytics provide are many, and we've gone through a bunch of them here, and what you should be looking for in a file analytics solution. So again, I'd like you to ask yourself, what would it mean if you had secure knowledge that any information you needed was available and at your fingertips? And what if that system was doing all the work for you in the background without you having to intervene once it's initially set up and configured based on your business needs? And that your users have the support they need. If you can think of anything else that you'd want to do with this, there's probably a number of things that you could do as far as improving the environment, getting justification for expanding systems, for adding new features to the underlying storage, and for getting the most out of a really big investment that you probably are already making into primary storage. So the next steps, how do we move forward? Well, let us know how we did on the survey that's going to be sent around for this. We're going to have more of these webinars to go into some more specific details on solutions that are available that meet these requirements. And I'm sorry for the late start we had today and the troubles with WebEx. And I hope that this was of some interest to you. Normally, there's probably a little bit of time left. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to entertain them now.